Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Rum. This is a podcast of two brothers from opposite ends of the spectrum. My name's Kent. I'm a rum drinker, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon, tend to be a little more conservative. Join us as we explore this experiment. Can two brothers from different sides of the political spectrum have a civil conversation and celebrate our differences?
What are you drinking?
Well, I am drinking coffee. Some type of cheap hotel brewed coffee at night. I don't know. I love bourbon. I love the taste of it. And it sounds a little weird not drinking bourbon and on a bourbon and rum podcast, but I'm taking a little break from alcohol. So we'll see. Maybe I'll come back. Maybe I'll have to say, bourbon, AKA coffee, and rum, AKA something, we'll see.
Well, I mean, if you decide to make that permanent, you got to get rid of a couple of those bottles. You call me and I'll be down there with a U-Haul and we'll be all good.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, I don't want to go into a diatribe about that, but I mean, I've thought about just being done with alcohol. Is that crazy?
Well, no. I mean, it's certainly laudable. I mean, if you think about, maybe this is something that we haven't completely settled on a topic, but I don't know if you'd want to discuss other intoxicants. I just wonder because, I mean, I love a rum. I've found myself drinking less and less of it. So, I just have a single drink, just not too much. I'm happier that way. But it does make you think a little bit with all of the collateral things that go along with alcohol. There's a lot of calories. It can be toxic for your liver and stuff. I mean, I don't think having a drink now and then is going to be that horrible, but it does have downstreams completely. And then, now many states are legalizing cannabis, smoking weed or edibles and all this stuff. And it's kind of astonishing, for all of the villainization of drugs generally, when we were young, if you think about it, Dare and all of the.
What was that guy?
Peter Toma.
Yeah.
That'd be one for the producer to look up a link for. Maybe we can find a video of him.
That guy.
But I think it's really interesting. I think it's obvious that, heroin, cocaine, like these things can, meth, like this can go really, really bad. But it's interesting to me that marijuana, the cannabis, was lumped in that. There's some history on this actually, back to the 20s and 30s. And association, there's some racial overtones to why cannabis was so vilified. Boy, my experience has been that if I had exposure to reliable gummies with a published milligram dose on the bag instead of barfing up cheap beer, boy, looking back, and of course, I think one of the big reasons that we drink, we have incredible culture built around alcohol, and which results in a lot of social pressures and things, right? So
probably used to subscribe to the belief that if somebody doesn't drink, I don't trust them, So now I guess I'm untrustworthy now, but yeah, I mean, and I'm not done. I mean, I'm not saying it's over, but to me, it's not even there's the health piece of it, the caloric piece of it. I just don't necessarily want to be checked out. You know what I mean? And I feel like with alcohol and, pick your poison. I mean, even a harmless drug, it's like a process of kind of checking out of the moment. And not to say that's bad. I mean, that some people need that. I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot about wanting to stay in the moment more.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
an interesting thought. It's a really interesting thought. And you're drinking coffee, so you're getting a drug in there with a little
Yeah, no, I mean,
caffeine.
I'm not anti-drug
No,
from
no,
that.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying it's an interesting thing how I do think it's like alcohol in most parts of society. Yeah, I mean, clearly cannabis has a rich culture all its own, but it's kind of associated with a counterculture. Like you don't
right.
usually go out for a business dinner and pass a joint around.
Yeah,
It would make for more interesting meetings if we did.
hell yeah, yeah, most definitely.
But yeah, so that's yeah. Well, good.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm saying my wife thinks, she's like, yeah, whatever, like next week, I'm going to be halfway through a bottle. So I don't know how long it'll last, but I'm playing with it a little.
Well, I do think that this is true of anything in life practically. If you do it all the time, it becomes routine and you don't derive the same pleasure out of it.
Right.
And so, like, you know, Captain Obvious here, moderation is the key to things. And sometimes just, setting something aside for a while is a good way to regain. When you take something for granted,
Right.
you don't even enjoy it. So now you're consuming the calories, you're a little bit checked out. You're all those things, and you're not really deriving the great joy of the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. Well, what are you drinking? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go down a tangent there.
No, not at all. And in fact, I chose not to pour a drink tonight myself, although I probably should. Maybe I'll step aside in a moment and do it. I'm all amped up. I don't want to get into my work, but I've been really as you know, my history is not in anything very technical. I work in a very people intensive business, but I've always been a little bit geeky. And in the new role that I'm in, I'm doing a lot more work in data and have been really utilizing AI tools a lot. I'm writing code. I am no Copilot's writing the code, but it's kind of crazy for me to have that ability by proxy, by being able to leverage AI to do that.
Yeah.
And however, I mentioned to you last night, we chatted for a moment. I had that frustrating experience where and who's the intelligent one now? Because I spent 2 hours, I got stuck on a loop with Copilot trying to solve a problem in a program, and it kept saying, I see exactly what's wrong. Try this. It should fix it. Then I'd try that. The code takes 10 or 15 minutes to run and it's same error. And then I go back, same thing. And I realized what the problem was. And maybe this is asking too much out of AI. There's no self-awareness
Yeah.
of of a chatbot. But you kind of need that. And I don't think it would be that hard to program into it. Like something in the code that says if you supply the same damn answer 4 times in a row, like maybe and it still errors, maybe you should think about something different.
Yeah. I don't know if you've played around with any of the other chats out there, but like if I was talking to Grok is really fascinating. It's got its own like personality. Like you could bring up the same topic with it and it'll give you a completely different kind of angle or like it almost has a little bit of attitude.
Interesting.
And then they've also got these different varieties. Like they've got like an argumentative one.
What's the backstory on Grok? Who owns it? What's it running on? Do you know any of that?
It's X. It's Elon.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's got voice mode. So
okay.
you can talk into it.
You just talk, and I'll respond like we're having a real chat. What's on your mind?
And then I won't play. There's another one that is like, uh, it is crazy. It'll be like, you mother blankety blank. Like, oh my
Like a
gosh.
like the Goodfellas chatbot. Well, where does this go? This was a data point I saw yesterday in a Wall Street Journal. Moderna, the pharma company, has merged its AI and tech department with its HR department. If
That is
that doesn't
wild.
make you all feel like vulnerable,
Yeah. Did they give any explanation about that?
if they did, I didn't catch it. I just saw the headline, but you know, you could have desks right next to each other. The one person's the AI deployment person, the other one's the talent management person, and they're just going down the list. We don't need that guy. We don't need that woman. We don't need that person. Click, click, click.
Yeah. That's crazy. You know, for my work, I've been working on a custom GPT, and it was funny. We were having a meeting today with some folks, and somebody was explaining something, and they said, well, they were talking about an alternative, and they said, we don't need chat gpt, we've got this over here, and it was kind of like, the person didn't probably mean anything by it, but it was kind of like, well, this chat gpt, like it's a fad type of a thing, kind of the impression, like, this is like this little, well, this is nice, this little thing you're screwing around with. But I'm like, I just think like 2 years from now, it's going to be in everything we do. Like,
Everything.
I mean, it's not like just some passing technological fad here. I mean, this thing is going to change. I mean, it's going to overhaul everything we know.
Yeah, and it's the self-referential part that I think is both scary but offers the same promise. Again, here I'm a guy who knows nothing, and I'm able to write pretty functional code using the tool. What that means is people that are good at writing code already use this as an extension, and it's like self-sharpening, and it
Right.
just gets better and better. However, the input side of it is the large language model. And my hypothesis on this is that there's going to be a huge bump in the next couple of years, but then it's going to reach a point of diminishing returns because I saw a comment on this that OpenAI trains their models on publicly available stuff on the internet, but how much new original content is being written right now? How many memos in a company go out that don't get cranked through a chatbot today?
Right. Yeah.
So eventually we get to the point where all of the stuff on which it would train was written by itself. And I think then you start to get a real interesting mix because you don't have any new ideas being created.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's funny. I'm communicating with several folks, working on a couple of opportunities, and I was trying to get somebody's attention. I'm trying to get a meeting with them, and the guy's French, and so I was, and on pretty much any email, any client email, I have to say full disclosure, I use ChatGPT almost exclusively. I'll put whatever I'm writing in there, like, hey, refine this a little bit, because it just makes it crisper and sharper and better presented, and it was like, oh, he's French. You want me to say it in French? I'm like, yeah, what the hell? So I had a, so I sent this guy an email in French, and I dumped it into Google Translate just to make sure, and I mean, it was spot on. So it'll be interesting to see if he responds in French or English. But you think about that, like, I mean, cut and paste, and I guess you can do that in Google Translate, but the thing spit it out, like it created something and then put it in another language. I mean, that's a thing. The language thing, like foreign languages could be a thing of like a non-issue in the future. I mean, and it could already happen where you can just be talking.
My phone lets me call people in other languages and talk in real time, and it translates on the fly. It's a
Wow.
feature in the calling app of my phone.
So it's
And
here.
so, what's that?
It's here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You can it's a button in the thing. I need to call somebody in France. Oh, okay, I'm calling in French. Push the button. And the hotel answers, bonjour. You're like, can I get a room for tomorrow night? And it's what they hear is perfect French saying, can I get a room for tomorrow night?
Yeah. I mean, so then it's like, why the hell would you learn another language? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been in our previous conversations, I've been pretty critical about the Doge and Again, just point of order, not about the idea of cutting government expense. I'm all for that, but I think it's been haphazard and I think the methodology's been questionable. However, you have to think like the IRS, the history has been that, you hire IRS agents, you do more audits, you find more tax scams, the government's better, and an IRS agent pays for themselves in the first 6 months. However, it's not the agents that are out doing the fraud investigations that we should cut, but the people that kind of do basic reading and looking over things like,
Right.
and I'm sure they're already using some of that tool. They've done OCR and stuff for a long time, but like, wow, okay, so you train the language model, you read 250 tax return or 250 million tax returns this year, you tell it how many of those were fraudulent, and you say, spot the hallmarks, and you GPT audit the ones that you think are questionable. Like, wow,
Well, or uh, I mean, why couldn't you advance that to the source and, you know, you do TurboTax and it will tell you if it's going to be, flagged or not. And you'll know, like, you could do it pretty far upstream to where as soon as the stuff gets filed, it's like, whoop, this is a problem.
well, and TurboTax could tell you 20% of the people that claimed this deduction got audited because of it. Are you sure you want to do that
Yeah.
to save yourself 40 bucks?
Yeah. Right. Well, that's a thing. I don't know, something that doesn't really get much play anymore. And I guess to a degree is kind of be interesting if we had a tech person to talk to, but IoT was the big thing
Mm-hmm.
there for 5, 6 years ago. You don't hear any IoT anymore, but because I mean, the benefit of IoT is it's capturing all this real time data that's plugging into all those internet sources and stuff. Well, now, I mean, AI is, I mean, I guess there's still the value of IoT was plugging into like getting all the inputs. But if you can capture all the inputs, you don't need any kind of algorithm. You just use AI to process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where the IoT is the front end of things. You get all that data being cranked out somewhere. Now you put a layer on top of that AI to interpret what does that mean? And what it finds out is it talks to 3 million people's refrigerators to find out how often they're opening the door.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff, the kind of insights that you can find.
I always think of it's going to be, I think we're really close to where it's going to be like Minority Report. You're going to walk into J.C. Penney, hey, and you're going to have a little video message that pops up on a screen. Hey, Kent. Hey, good to see you. I know you've been searching for sweaters, and hey, here's sweaters right here. Have you thought of this?
It's not strictly AI, but it's a technology thing. You probably aren't going to be in Detroit anytime soon, but at the Delta terminal in Detroit, when you walk just past security, there's a taped off thing on the floor and there's a video board. And I don't know if you have to tell, I think you scan your boarding pass at a kiosk. And then anywhere you're standing in this, half basketball court area taped on the floor, you look at the video board and it says, Robert Clark, your gate is A34. You're in huge letters.
Oh
And
my gosh.
you standing next to me would see your own. I'm standing there next to somebody and it shows me a different image than it shows the other person. I don't
And
know
that's
how they did
happening?
it. Yeah, it's right. It's been at Metro Airport inside the terminal for over a year. Been like two
Gosh.
years. It's crazy.
Wow. Well, that I'm dating myself because I said you're going to walk into J.C. Penney's. Well, nobody's ever going to walk into J.C. Penney's again.
Well,
So that'll be
like
a
if this
long.
works, well, I mean, it does work, but like if it scales, right now your highway sign doesn't say, alert, Amber Alert. It says, hey, Mr. Clark, you're going to need gas, and these are three options for you to consider.
Well, that's the thing. Like driving, you talk to folks about the future of automobiles. If you could plug every vehicle into the grid, if you will, and all those vehicles were driven autonomously. I mean, number
Hmm.
one, you wouldn't need any road signs, you wouldn't need any traffic stops, you wouldn't need any lights. Everything would just be flying seamlessly.
Yeah.
Um, but that, that's one of those that, you know, getting the last pair of keys out of the last person's hand. I mean, they could make that happen in North Korea next week, but someplace where there's the free wide open road, that's going to be a long time coming.
Well, I think we've touched on this before, but yeah. So like it sends people into absolute orbit if Waymo hits somebody on and don't want to sound insensitive. That's a tragedy if someone gets killed by an autonomous car. 50,000 people got killed in car wrecks, but cars driven by humans last year.
Right.
And our threshold for that is just completely asynchronous. We are not ready for that. Even though, I mean, if AI cars killed 20,000 people a year, but we didn't have people driving, we're twice as good than we were, but it
Right.
would just send people into orbit.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of things to it, right? Liability insurance. Who do you sue when
Yeah.
your autonomous car hits somebody?
Yeah. Yeah. Until it's all autonomous and it's all managed, it's going to be a problem. But honestly, there's European cities that they don't allow, like only electric vehicles inside the city or only bicycles or something. I mean, that's one way you could do it is you could say, hey, inside of this city, everything's autonomous. You
Yeah.
can drive to the outskirts, but you can't drive in the city.
Right. Once you hit the Holland Tunnel into the New York, well, some of that's financial incentive. New York's done that. That I can't remember what there's the name they use for it, but basically, if you want to drive your car south of 32nd Street or something, it's $20 a day.
Wow.
Like you just anywhere, like it's a toll city, which
Yeah.
I mean makes sense.
Switching gears a little bit, I've been ideating a book idea, and I'm not ready to say what it is, and I won't until I get it further baked and written. Only person I've told is my wife, so I wouldn't tell anybody else because it may all not happen, or I may be puttering with it for the next 30 years. So I don't want to get into you know, I do, I kind of made a conscious decision. I don't want to go tell everybody what I'm doing. And then not, no offense to anybody, but I don't really want the input. I kind of want to figure out what I want to do. And then at some point I would want to tell folks. Um, but I got to thinking about it as I'm writing this. Every email I write right now, I dump into Chat GPT. But if
Mhm.
I'm writing text for a book, I mean, okay, yeah, I could dump it into Chat GPT and it sounds good, but I don't know. I don't think that's right though. I'm well, not right or wrong, but then is that really my creation?
Well, I would say yes. I mean, it's an interesting question. There were people 40 years ago who were like, look, I've typed all of my manuscripts, and this son of a gun using a word processor is cheating. They didn't write it, they just put it into a computer. I mean, it's not exactly the same thing because now we're talking about truly generative words. I see it as though a smooth evolution over time. I don't think it's radically different. However, I think that, like, again, for reading memos and emails, it's fine. A novel written by ChatGPT?
Well, but okay, but if it's the novel, it's one thing if you say, "Hey, write a novel about a guy that kills somebody and gets away with it," and then it writes 1,000 pages based on one idea. But like if you write the whole thing and then you use it to polish it, I don't know.
Mhm.
I mean, it's an interesting dilemma
Hmm.
because I'm sure it would make it insanely more readable.
Right. But also dull. I mean, that's the thing. Like,
Yeah,
one of the things that we look for, this goes back to my point
that's
about
a
what
good point.
happens
Yeah,
when everything is in perfect, clear bullet points. You know what I mean? Like you rewrite the Bible and it's actually the five commandments with the the subpoints under, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
lose the richness. And I think that there's a limit to how much we can do away with that without having to put that creative energy back into it.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Now, if you were going to write a novel, what you might do is start out with that conversation with even a voice conversation. You do it when you're driving, kind of sketch the ideas. Here's what I'm thinking. This is the basic
That's
germ
an
of the
interesting
plot.
way to do it the opposite.
Like,
Get the
here's my germ
outline.
of a plot, and I've used things for like that a couple times to say, all right, I've got a project I'm working on. Can you sketch me like what are the steps that I should use in this process? You do that with a book. Here's the core of the idea: a guy who kills somebody and gets away with it. I think that let me tell you about the characters I'm interested in. Let me tell you about like build it from the ground
Yeah.
up rather than the top down.
That's an interesting thought. I didn't think about that. Well, and actually, I already used it because I figured out the top six characters, and I already had it spit out names, and you give me choices of random names because you don't like. I always wonder about that. Like, how do you pick these names to make them sound?
Interesting. I'd be interested in reading that. I might read it or I might upload it
Yeah.
and say, give me the digest of it.
Hey, you know what I started doing, by the way? Well, I hit a limit, but I'm scanning Nanya's manuscript into it of Baba's
Really?
experiences. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And I was going to, and I told it, I said, look, my grandma, for the readers, our grandfather fought World War II under General Patton. He was in North Africa and D-Day and saw a lot of action. And, while he was still with it and, long before his death, he sat and dictated to my grandmother like all his stories, and then she wrote it all in this book. It's about 85, 90 page, and it's all just she just all typewritten. And what I wanted, I told it, I said, look, I don't want to change. I don't want to change the language because it was him saying it to her. I mean, it's pretty much verbatim. Like you don't want to. I don't need you to change the flow, but you could work on maybe organizing it differently or so it's kind of crafting chapters and how to kind of flow it to maybe titles and could bake it into something that we could then ultimately I want to put it in something we can actually print and publish and not
That's
publish but
really
it for us.
that's a really cool idea. You know what else might be an interesting use of technology in that? He was a particular witness to history. I mean, in our youth, there are very few World War II veterans alive today.
Right.
But in our youth, they were around, family, friends, relatives had fought in the war. But the nature of his service, where he was, Second Armored Division, like he was at really critical parts over the war, like Battle of the Bulge, like right in the middle of it.
Right.
What might be interesting would be as you go through the narrative, have it bring in like rich
Historical. Yeah.
historical, like you think about, you read a
Yeah.
book, here's the story, and then there's a sidebar, a little bit about Bizerte. What was that place and what was it about? And
That's genius. Yeah, that would make it really jump off the page, especially for the kids and stuff to read it.
yeah, because there's stuff there, right? Like he was at the places
Yeah.
that that and you could even like it could be you could find YouTube links to you know
Yeah.
video of D-Day. I don't.
Well, he said, I was just reading it the other day as I was dumping it in there, and he landed at Normandy at 3 a.m. I think it was D+1. So I think because D Day was the morning of one day, and he showed up at 3 in the morning the next day, and he was just the talking about you show up on the beach and he's like, it was still chaos. There's bodies everywhere. It's just a man, just and he didn't, it wasn't, let's just, say he was not the type to embellish. I mean, he was a pretty straight shooter and said, this is how it was. And,
Yeah.
and that's a good point. because his words are like, it was chaos. There were bodies everywhere. And then we went over here and did this. Like he didn't, there wasn't a lot of like, he wasn't going to be exaggerating or adding, embellishing or color or anything. That just wasn't him.
Yeah. But to bring in that outside context and other sources and links for more ideas and like
Yeah.
it could be really rich. And now I think a little bit about myself. So uh we did for mom and dad a couple of years ago that Storyworth where
Yeah.
you have a dialogue, you go back and forth with email, and then after a certain period, it kind of takes it up and binds it up and sends it back to you as a book so you can give it to your family. And I started down that path. I've actually uploaded some stories and then I forgot about it, and but how would it be to engage an AI chatbot to kind of tell your own story?
Wow. Yeah.
And ask it to ask probing questions and dig a little deeper, prompt me, help me remember things. And then it can remember, because then you say all of a sudden, well, now we're talking about when I was 16, but I do remember about this one thing when when I was little, and like it can piece that back together for you.
We ought to have a podcast and have the talking AI as the third party.
I think that art, and by that I mean visual arts, I mean spoken word, the written word, that may be the antidote for that may be the last line of defense. Because believe me, the lawyers and the accountants are going to get overwritten by AI pretty fast.
Right.
What if the artists run the world?
Yeah. That's a really, that's quite an angle. You're right, because that's the one last remaining bastion that it, it really matters how unique and different it is
Well, don't you feel like you can spot the AI generated art from across a room? You know exactly what you're looking at.
for now, but that's also a year old. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think that it's a technical challenge. I think that there's something else. I think the eye of a painter, I don't think you're ever going to get AI to reproduce Michelangelo. You could copy Michelangelo.
yeah,
I think there's something about art.
yeah,
For me, I mean, I'm an orator. I think I'm a pretty good speaker. I speak to crowds, and I like to present and things like that. I think there's some art to the way that I use like I don't know that that could be AI'd. The
right.
if the message is just communicating the ideas, yeah, it can take over there. But can it keep an audience spellbound?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, and then it brings up the point, all these things that it can replace in the grand scheme of things, how essential were those things to begin with?
Yeah.
Like, well, we talked about in the last podcast, like, it was the last one, or the one before, like, when we started in the workforce, nobody had computers. And,
Hmm.
I'm asking a secretary, can you type these scribbles onto a piece of paper that I can hand off to somebody? And then all of a sudden I'm doing 100 emails a day, and it's like, I'm not communicating anymore. There's not any additional communication. I mean, it's just different. I mean, yeah, maybe I'm talking to more people, or I'm, saying thank you on an email or something, but is it spreading more of a message? I mean, is it just communication to communicate, or is it really spreading any more of a message than it was before it existed?
Well, my grandson's coming to visit tomorrow, and he's 4. And I think a lot about, what's the world that he's going to live in going to be
Yeah.
like when I think about these topics. And, then I think, well, I shouldn't offer advice because he won't take it anyway. But like, if I could offer advice, like my first blush is, oh, get a computer engineering degree, like go into software design, right? Actually, no. I think that those are the skills that are going to be replaceable. Maybe, and this has been like for university, it's been a joke for a long time. Well, you go get a music degree or a theater degree, and what good is that? Honestly, those may be the people that win this game at the end of it, because
Yeah.
That's the element that you can't easily, at least, I won't say never, but it's really, really hard to recreate with AI.
Yeah.
And so maybe encouraging kids to cultivate their uniqueness, their art, their personal voice, their distinctiveness, their differentiation. I don't want to get political about this, but the whole thing about DEI has been so politicized and I think missing the point. You and I've talked about this very thing, and I don't mean DEI as the label, but you know what it's like when you have a rich team of various viewpoints. That's the thing we need to cultivate in people
Yeah.
because the mundane is going to get swallowed by the machine.
Yeah. Well, and that's a rabbit hole we could get into, but honestly, I'm all for the diversity and the inclusion piece. I think the equity piece is the part that I struggle with. The equity around, equity of outcomes. Okay, equity
Yeah,
be an opportunity, all for it. Um,
right.
and I think that is honestly a big hang up. And it's like, well, we shouldn't be like ditching diversity. That's a good thing. The more people, the more voices. That's all good.
Right. Well, and even equity, again, rabbit hole. What I would say, you know, I've been immersed in this world for a long time, and it's almost like in the last 3 or 4 years, the conservative world discovered that universities are talking about DEI. But the thing about the equity piece, I'm with you on that. I think trying to engineer equal outcomes is a fool's errand. However, I do think that all people, regardless of where they start, have the capacity to do great things. And so when you see outcomes that are when you see outcomes that certain classes or races or cultures of people perennially fall short of the mean of what everybody else is doing, I think that that's a good reason to ask the question, what is it about the lived experience of those people that means that they're not succeeding at the same rate, which is kind of a different thing than engineering equitable
Yeah, that's
outcomes. It's
different. That's different than, hey, we're going to send everybody a check to make sure they all make the same amount. That's what I'm talking about.
completely,
Yeah.
completely. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess though, and I know you're wanting to go to bed. I need to go to bed. I got to get a flight in the morning, but I love this conversation. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I feel like this is a really rich conversation. I have had 0 drops of alcohol, so I don't want to get railing on the alcohol subject again. But what I was going to say is how much of that creative spark is tied to a spiritual element, and
Mm.
is that why there is a inherent difference between the artificial intelligence and the human?
That is the $1 million question. And in fact, I think we could even break this into multiple parts. I will go a step beyond where you're saying that, and this is more than we could possibly tackle. My personal religious beliefs have morphed to a degree that I believe, like I don't have it graphed out, don't get me wrong, but here's my chain of thought. The part of the traditional Orthodox Christian Trinity that never made sense to me was the Holy Spirit. You got a God the Father, like we can all picture the image of the long white beard in the clouds. You've got Jesus, the very Caucasian smiling bearded man that's portrayed in a lot of
So
Christian art,
the
right?
Danish guy that's living in the Middle East, yeah.
But but put your finger on the Holy Spirit. And I was a pastor for 10 years, and I would even then kind of struggle, like, well, you know, yeah, the Holy Spirit kind of is all around. Like it's really an elusive concept. But what I've come to believe, in fact, I now believe more in the Holy Spirit than I believe in the other elements of the Trinity, because I believe what the Holy Spirit is that connection between people and the
Mm.
connection between people and nature and the connection between people and history, and like those things are in my mind manifestation of the Holy Spirit, and that feels very holy to me when you put it in that context.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is a inherent quality that you can't reproduce in a computer.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I
That's interesting. Your view of the Holy Spirit, it's kind of like an innate element of like consciousness.
Yeah, I think it is. And oh man, this is going deep. We can keep talking, but the producer she may get 2 episodes out of this one before we're done
Yeah.
with it. Okay, I'm gonna throw one at you. So I've been watching some YouTube videos about aliens, and I had a I saw an idea. There's quite a bit of talk about it now lately that really dawned on me. I don't believe. Okay, so you said it a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about like let's not buy F-35s, and your point is like, why are we buying any airplane that a human being flies? Right? We don't need to have the guy in the machine. And boy, if you think in 2025 humans are coming to that realization, a civilization advanced enough to explore outside of its own galaxy, are they going to be like, yeah, we got to put a dude in that capsule?
Right.
Why in the hell would you put a person in a capsule and fly, 20 light years across? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But what if the aliens aren't alien? What if, and maybe you've seen this, what if they are advanced humans or another species from way back that beat us in evolution, was way ahead of us, now lives in the future and has come back to visit us?
Mm.
In other words, when we're seeing aliens, when we're experiencing these phenomena, it's not something from outer space. It's something from here. They live, and Google this stuff a little bit. They live underground. They live in the oceans. They live, and it's just escaped our knowledge for so long. Or they literally are from the future traveling back here, but they've been here all along.
That does remind me of a quick story. I was in the Air Force and stationed in Ohio, and we had this civilian that I worked with, and he was retiring, and I was chatting with him, and he's kind of an interesting guy, and I was chatting with him, and I'm like, yeah, so well, you're retiring, so what all you gonna do? He's like, I'm gonna spend time with the family and the kids. And he's like, you know, and honestly, the one project I really want to work on, oh, it sounds crazy, but I've always wanted. I can't even say that. He's like, seriously, a heart attack. He's like, yeah, I always wanted to figure out time travel. And he was serious as could be. And I'm thinking, okay.
Well, now, now you have the time to work on it.
That sounds like a great project. Good luck with that. But that is, yeah, that I can see how that would. But then are you thinking, but then, okay, then it goes back to your original point, though. Like, if they're that advanced, why the hell do they have to send a person in time? Why wouldn't they send a
Well,
probe?
yeah. Or again, if they're from here, but they're living in the future, they've got a
Oh, yeah.
vested interest in making sure that we don't despoil the place with nuclear weapons by blowing everything.
Do you know anybody named Sarah Connor?
Oh
Well, but
man.
so so and you were a pastor one time. How put your pastor hat on, and I'm asking you for your thoughts. Do you how do aliens fit into God's plan?
Oh, uh I have no problem with that. Um Theoretically or philosophically, I don't know that and again, from any faith tradition, I don't know that we're promised like an exclusive deal.
Yeah.
Like I don't, and in fact, wouldn't it be weird if we were? Like if you take a traditional Christian worldview and an omnipotent, omnipresent God, and this world is the like that's where all of your energy is spent. Like that, it almost doesn't even add up. Like this is all that we have, but it's inconceivable to me that I would constrain God to operating in some relationship to just our world. And and for me, that somewhere that changes, man. You get out of the Hubble telescope or one of these, and you start looking at the vastness of the universe, or you start looking small. I had this thought the other day. I was getting on the freeway at this intersection that we've got near our house. It's rebuilt. It's this incredible intersection. And I'm looking around. You can see all this built environment. And I thought, what if there's a civilization where the planets are like atoms and the galaxies are like molecules, right? In that sense, do they see us? No, they don't. Like, and when we look at ant kingdoms, don't you bet there's a lot going on that we don't really
Yeah.
perceive because it's below? Like, like maybe what this is about is not about distance or, but like of scale.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense too. I mean, and I don't know how, well, and that would explain the seemingly infinite nature of the universe. I mean, if we're the size of an atom, I mean, you compare that to, a city, it's like an infinite amount of space.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that, certainly my beliefs, and I think a majority of Christians would, believe in a God as creator. I don't believe in a literal 7 day creation, but whatever, whomever God really is by definition the author of the universe. Right? You know what I mean? Like how that works. Like if you believe in a supreme God, then all of creation is the handiwork of that supreme God. And I look at the Webb telescope and I look at what that's like. Again, it's inconceivable to me that in all of this, God looks at all of his creation and he's like, that crowd right down there, that's the one. Like that just doesn't that it
Well,
almost seems
unless,
in contrast with the nature of God to me.
yeah, unless, you know, he's created it all and it's all been there.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. My belief is I take him for his word. It was in 7 days. But if I find out in the future, someday I meet him and he says no, it was figurative. It's like okay, like I don't know. I guess I'm not as I believe intently that he created it, that it's an intelligent design, that it didn't happen accidentally or it didn't happen as the Bang Theory tells it. But at the same time, I think sometimes you can get so wrapped around the actual around, well, how did it happen? And if I don't know exactly how it happened, I can't believe it. Well, there's a lot of stuff I believe that I can't necessarily.
Right. Um, I had a professor in seminary who had, I thought, just a brilliant response to it. He was a geologist by training, and he worked in Near Eastern archaeology as a geologist on the team. And so he would come in and he'd say, "Well, that's this kind of soil, and that's from over here." Really useful guy, but a very faithful Christian. But his whole academic background was about looking at how mountains are laid down from seabeds and how you know what I mean? And his answer was, I thought, so elegant. He said, the world's about 6 billion years old, minus whatever miracle God put into it.
Yeah,
And so
that's
it,
interesting.
it
Yeah,
bears all of the appearance of being this
yeah,
ancient thing, right? He acknowledged that God had the power to skip steps, but maybe God chose not to. The apparent thing that we have is this ancient world, and how God did it, I don't know.
yeah, right. Yeah, but I also think I always find that interesting whenever there's kind of like a debate with an apologist or something like that. I mean, the whole belief thing, it's even if you're the most ardent anti, if you're atheist, there's no way God exists. Getting the first step, okay, how do you get from the Big Bang to life?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get there's evolution of species, but how do you get from dust to breath? And that's the
Yeah,
part that seems like there's just not really an answer.
yeah. I don't know, and I don't mean any disrespect to people that think this. Atheism is like the most arrogant belief. True atheism. Agnosticism, I'm real comfortable with. And in fact, I'm borderline agnostic myself. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And acknowledging what I don't know Like that makes me like I completely resonate with that. And someone who looks at all of the world's religions and all the explanations and says, "Yeah, I hear you. I don't know. I don't know if I buy any of that." But somebody says, "Absolutely not."
I've ruled it out. Okay.
Yeah, like what's your evidence that it's not true? Now, again, if it's a binary choice between I got to believe in a literal 7 day creation or I'm an atheist, well, that's one thing.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not really what we're presented with, right?
No.
It's this range of stuff, and I I totally get people that don't feel confident that anybody's got it nailed down. But boy, a affirmative thought, no way, can't possibly be. That might not work out well. Just as a thought, we talked about the moon. I'm going to look this up. I wonder if there was much debate among the religious community about the moon launch. Like, how did that factor in? I mean, was there, people said like, if you think about all the other, like lots of other technical evolutions over time, I think that'd be interesting to look up. I have no idea if there was any debate about it, but I
But
gotta
don't you
believe that there
think
were
these
people.
conspiracies are all like, was there anybody at the time he's stepping off the ship? Oh, that's in a sound stage in California. Like,
Yeah, there might have been. I mean, uh, what my problem with conspiracy theories is like people are people are incapable of keeping their mouths shut.
right.
Like, I don't, I think the Kennedy thing was a conspiracy, and I think we're here, like it's coming out that there were
Right.
these things, right? There's unless and until somebody, just because the flag was blowing on the moon, unless somebody says, "Yeah, I was the camera guy," I,
Right.
you know, not gonna buy that.
So looping back to that original thought. So, I mean, back to the AI thing. I mean, is it capable of original thought?
I don't think so. I think all it's doing, at least what we've got right now. I mean, we're on this side of what people have called the singularity because the jumping off point is when AI is sufficiently capable that it can anticipate its own. You know what I mean? Like right now, it's still dependent. It's large language models. It's still dependent on lots of human tears to fuel its its
Right.
evil
Yeah.
designs. You know what I mean? Like, but when it becomes the point where it can provide its own context, that could be freaky.
Yeah.
I don't think it can. Well, there's another whole conspiracy line about the we live in a simulation.
Oh, yeah.
If you've dug into that at all.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, there's the whole point at which when is it sentient?
Yeah.
When can it feel? When can it perceive things? And I mean, I could certainly mask that, but is it possible to be sentient and not human?
My gut says no, but then I say no, and I'm like, oh, well, how the heck am I going to validate that?
Yeah.
What bothers me is that it is human created, and can the creation, now this is deep stuff, right? If indeed we are creations of God, are we God to AI?
Yeah.
We've
Interesting.
all the big fear is that, oh, it's going to blow up the world and it's going to do, but in my mind, a likelier outcome, and I've mentioned this before, probably on the podcast, that what happens is that we make all of our manual jobs eliminated, and we live in, the handful of us that are left after everybody starves to death because there's no work anymore. Like, we live in bliss of serving only our own pleasure because the creation that we've created does all the things to placate us and keep us happy. And it throws us mindless conspiracy theories to entertain us. And it throws us, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and then there's also the argument that do we create anything?
Mm.
Like we make stuff, but we're not creating elements from scratch. We're not creating the substances that made up the stuff. I mean, we're developing ideas, but where is the line between creation, just using the stuff that's here to make something.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because, again, if you go to my conception of God, more than in your, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but in your conception of God, it is the act of creation that is the differentiator. My conception of God is not necessarily, again, I'm not denying that God created the world, but I am saying that what he did, what God did, is not so important as what God is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm de-emphasizing the creation piece of it. And it really is more, again, I'm back to that Holy Spirit is the vibe between people and between nature. And so it's a state of being rather than an act of creation that differentiates that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to get there. That doesn't even make any sense. I don't know. My head's going in circles right now.
Well, and then back to your, and I didn't mean to skip over your simulation piece, but then that then would also bring up the point of, are we, is it possible we could be in a simulation if we have that spiritual connection?
Mm.
Or is it all simulated? And if it is all simulated, well, then yeah, AI could do all this stuff. And we're
Right.
just AI.
Right. Where, and I've heard some people, I probably listened to too many episodes of Joe Rogan with crazy people with this kind of stuff, but that that is one of the theories that like once we create general AI, we cross that singularity, like like that's the end of the game.
Hmm.
Like at that point, like we've hit the last level, and now there's nothing else yet to do because now the AI takes over.
You know, it would be, and I'm sure there'll be studies, if they haven't been done already, that are done. Back to your point around, is the original thought versus AI, like, start having really good painters paint stuff and have a AI make something. And is there that perception that we can't put a finger on, but because we're human, we connect to each other, that we'll get from a painting that we'll never get from AI, or that we'll pick up from somebody's book and their voice that's unique. I'm sure that in some ways that could be measured or evaluated. Can you tell the difference? It will be interesting to see as they start. I'm sure people will study this. Like, can you pick up a difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean I'm just picking on one thing. I happen to remember this a little while ago. There's a painting I saw in St. Louis, probably almost 30 years ago. We were there for a convention. And we went to the museum just because we do that when we're in town. And it was treasures from the Vatican. They had a bunch of Vatican art. Oh, I'm going to put a pin in the. I'm going to put a pin in the Pope. That sounds like I'm doing a little voodoo here. That's not what I mean. I want to come back to the Pope because we're rambling here. But there was a painting that I saw that, and to this day I remember it was Guido Remy is the artist. I wonder if we can find an image of this. And he, it's Saint Matthew, and he's composing his gospel, and there's a little angel, like a little cherub, that's reminding him of what happened. And it's like the cherub is counting on its fingers so it doesn't forget things that I got to tell Matthew that he's got to put in his gospel. And I swear the look in Matthew's eye, when you see that painting live, it is alive. It was painted 600 years ago or whatever. Are you Googling it?
Yeah.
Guido Remy, St. Matthew and the Angel, or something like that. I don't know why I brought this up. It reminds me of this idea that I think there's something to art that's transcendent
Yeah.
that you don't get when you say, Grok, give me a picture of a alligator in a bathtub. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can look.
So I did want to talk about the first American Pope.
Oh yeah.
And have you seen any of the interviews with his brothers?
Yeah. Did you see? I saw one the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, if I see him, I'm gonna give him a nookie or something."
Yeah. I just, I mean, it's unlikely that either you or I will become the Pope. Uh,
Yeah.
but what would that be like? Like Thanksgiving is never going to be the same.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, and it's like, I mean, the one brother had said they hadn't even talked to him. And this is like a week or two since it happened. I mean, the guy hadn't even been able to call his family.
I'm going to drop this. I found the picture.
Oh,
I'm going
great.
to drop it in the chat. It has stuck with me for 30 years. I find it really powerful. And I mean, you could pick any one of a thousand pieces of art that have that same kind of impact on people. I I don't think I may eat these words. I don't think a computer can create that.
Yeah, because it was done. Oh yeah.
It just spoke to me.
Yeah, that look on his face.
Yeah. Well, we probably should wrap this one, but we got some jumping off points here. I think some of these topics are interesting that we should pursue some more, and maybe in a more structured way. We ought to have an AI give us an outline of how we
Yeah.
should pick apart from a spiritual perspective the fallacies of AI.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. Again, I'm amazed that anybody would listen to our podcast anyway. So I'm glad they do. But like, I think it also represents that, you know, if our entire life was about politics, I mean, it's a pretty boring life. I mean, I know we have a lot of other interests, and I think it's good that we can explore other interests too.
Completely agree. I think it's not just because we talk about politics most weeks. It's been exhausting for me that this is top of mind. I want to live for a while where I don't have to think about what's happening in Washington on the daily. I want to be.
Yeah.
You raised this when we first started talking about being more present rather than being checked out. I think my one of my great temptations is to check out of life, the life that I'm living, the daily breathing and eating and exercising and working, and I'm thinking about how aggrieved I am by crap that's happening in Washington. Like that's a measure of being checked out all its own.
It's its own drug. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's its own drug, and if that's true, which I think it is, like we got a big drug problem right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should wrap.
Sounds good. Kent, I've enjoyed it. This is a first podcast on the road. I'm going to have to do this more often.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.